What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Alpha Bravo podcast. I'm your host, Eric.
And I'm your host, Freddie.
And what we do here is we go through everything real estate. Whether you're a beginner or you have some experience, we'll share some tips and stories to help you succeed. And so today, we actually have a very special guest. He was one of our very first mentors, a good friend of ours now. I want you to please welcome ED PEUGH.
Hey.
Let's go.
Let's go. What's up, guys?
What's going on?
Super excited to be here. It's been fun to watch your guys' journey. It's been fun to watch you guys grow and do these different things. And now to be able to sit with you and have a conversation is super cool for me. So I appreciate it.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Man. Absolutely. It's pretty dope, man. I know you bring with a bag tons of value over here. You like to pour into people and help them succeed and reach out. So I know this show is going to be packed with gems. I'm excited for that.
I think so too. We'll jump right into it here. So tell us a little bit about your backstory, because I know we go way back. We've known you for a while now, but for the people that don't know you, tell us a little bit about, who you were before real estate.
Sure. I probably frame that in the reverse order. So today we operate a wholesale business called CLT Buyers. And we use that business to cherry pick deals that we're going to buy and hold ourselves or that we're going to flip. So we're recording this in 2024. But if you go all the way back to 2005, I was actually, Freddie and I are both former Marines. So I was actually on active duty and I bought my first investment back in 2005. And so since that time, we've learned about creative financing. We've learned about private money. We've learned about a lot of tools to use in the business. And those tools kind of still serve us in the business today.
Perfect. So nice. Whenever you were first getting started, was there like a source, like a podcast, book, YouTube, YouTuber, anyone that you were following that had like a big impact on like what you were learning and your projection?
Okay. So I'm going to sound like an old head here when I say, back when I got started in 2005, we didn't have bigger pockets and we didn't have like the YouTubes and the Facebook groups and a lot of the things that people have today. So finding a lot of this information early on was actually pretty challenging. But I specifically remember, I grew up in a certain environment where today I would say, monetarily we had less than others. I don't know how aware I was of that at the time, but now obviously it's pretty clear. And then I, just like everyone, I read the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And the most surprising takeaway for me of reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad was I grew up in an environment where everyone was effectively in a poor mindset. And so I didn't know that there were two mindsets. And so what Rich Dad, Poor Dad did for me was, obviously that book isn't super detailed and it's not the most advanced book, but it highlighted to me that there is a different mindset and that with a different mindset, we can approach life differently. So that set me on a whole journey of trying to develop a wealth-focused mindset.
And this was back in 2005, right? And you were still enlisting, you started investing in real estate. So how was it being active during military and doing real estate on the side?
Yeah, I mean, Freddie, you of all people can appreciate this, but I remember I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and then on base, they have these seminars to help out like young Marines, right? So they had this house buying seminar. So I go to my NCO, that's your most direct manager, and I was like, "Hey, Corporal, I'd like to go to this home buying seminar." And he literally to my face said, "Why would you go to a home buying seminar? You're never going to own a house."
Wow, deep. What did you say? What was
what do you? I mean, you're not going to
rock, Corporal.
Yeah, you don't get. I mean, you know more than any, but you don't get to argue with these people, right? So you're just like, okay, good to go, and you go away, and so then you start doing other things to research it. But no, I mean, getting started while you're in the Marine Corps was challenging in that, you don't have the flexibility to just be like, all right, I'm going to go bounce out for a couple hours. I'll be back. Like you have times you have to be on duty and whatever. So I had to find ways to work around all of that. So I remember specifically the first property I ended up buying was a duplex. And I remember specifically going over there at 10 p.m. at night to a house I didn't know anything about with a flashlight and like trying to look in the windows. And, I don't know if today I would do the same thing, but you get started somewhere. So I was lucky. Financing was relatively easy back then. This is like pre-crash. Navy Federal is, I think, who I financed that with in the first place. And, as veterans, we have like a veterans programs we can use, but I happened to use something that was like a parallel program to a veterans program. So I didn't even use my certification. Nice. And that's how we purchased the first one. They talk about that time period about like if you had a pulse and could fog a mirror, you could get a loan. That was kind of real. You would walk into the bank and just say like, I want to buy this house. It's $130,000. And they're like, okay, here's the check. So for that specific element, it was relatively easy. We made a lot of mistakes with that property. I over improved it. I spent way too much money, but it got us started.
Right. So '05, and you went through the '08 crash.
Yeah.
So definitely you start '05 investing. Yeah, I'm doing okay. And then boom, you get punched in the throat with the '08 crash. How was that you maneuvering through the '08 crash and still staying till this day, 2024?
Yeah. We were a little more insulated from '08 and '09 because we were initially only buy and hold guys. So I wasn't even doing any type of flipping. So I kind of came into investing backwards. I was a buy and hold guy first, and then I became a flipper, and then ultimately I run a wholesale business now. And normally it's the other way around. So '08, '09 was more like an opportunity for us to purchase some properties at a discount. Financing became more challenging during that time, but I was fully employed. I was fully employed outside of real estate until 2018. So like we had a lot of years where we had some W-2 income where we could document things and give pay stubs and all that stuff. So that probably helped along the journey. But yeah, '08, '09 gives us a little bit of underpinning and support to our point of view about when we're buying properties we intend to keep, that there's got to be positive cash flow. And if there's positive cash flow, then really regardless of the equity position of the property, we're really never in a position where we have to sell. And so that's probably why one of the things that we really see as a cornerstone of our business today is like, let's make sure that at a minimum there's positive cash flow, because then we can withstand market fluctuations.
Gotcha.
Right. And so, I mean, you said we a lot, and we know you have a business partner now. Did you have any business partners before that as well, or kind of always been solo?
Yeah. So I've had in different forms, probably 4 to 5 different partnerships. Many people who know me well know that I actually happen to have a twin brother, and at some point he was actually one of my business partners. We're not business partners today. We decided we make a lot better brothers than business partners, and that's been a positive move for us. But so I left my full-time employment in 2018, started to really see the bones of what became CLT Buyers at that time. And then about that same time, met my current business partner, Michael Fishman. Michael was a guy who had a little less experience in me in real estate, but has a great background. He's an accounting guy by education, and he's a guy who I think we're both, if we talk about like the tactical guys versus kind of the visionary guys, we're both kind of skewed towards visionary. But if one of us has to do some of the tactical things, I think he's more equipped to do that than I am. So that means that he's been able to compensate me in ways that other partners I've worked with haven't. So, if you're working with 2 people who are both super visionary, then the small things get missed a lot.
Right.
And some of my partnerships in the past, that's been a bit of the challenge. So Michael definitely brought some underpinnings of as you guys know more than anyone, but SOPs and processes really matter in our business. And he converted what was a bit of like a side hustle into a true business. And I'm really thankful for his support in that.
Perfect. So I want to talk about early on, what were some of the biggest mistakes that you made that also taught you the biggest lessons as well?
Yeah, the most reoccurring problem in my business in mass, like every one of us make mistakes in transactions, and that just, you don't properly account for a risk of a certain thing happening. You don't properly account for a tenant becoming difficult. You don't properly account. So those are kind of one-offs. But as an overarching challenge in my business, I think what I've tried to become more aware of is not allow my ego to get in the way of our decision-making. Again, Freddie and you and I have some very, very similar traits. You and I have talked at length about this offline, but the fact that we kind of had the military training gives us this idea that like, I will work through a problem no matter what. Like I will bust through a brick wall if I have to. If the mission is bust through the brick wall, then I'm going to bust through the brick wall. And sometimes that tendency can cause us to rely on our own egos a little bit in a way that becomes detrimental, and not change strategy, not adjust strategy quickly enough. So there's like 2 or 3 times where, like I've sued someone for specific performance before. In hindsight, that may have been more about my ego and trying to prove that we were right than making a really legitimate business case to this being beneficial to my business. We would have lost, had we just cut our on that specific deal, had we just cut our losses off the jump, we would have been out $3,000. But instead of that, we decided to spend like $18,000 and an additional 18 months in a crummy deal. What really boils down to like protecting my ego. And that's not the only example of that in our business. And so each time I look at like things that have become really problematic in our business, I'm trying to say like, why didn't we pivot sooner? Why didn't we make a different decision? Why didn't we reevaluate quicker? And I think the heart of that is like my ego gets in the way. So I'm trying to be more cautious about that or aware of it in our business now.
So you mentioned you started buy and hold and fix and flip and then wholesaling.
Yep.
Kind of backwards,
Yeah.
right? So you start wholesaling, you move up, but what was your green flags to go for wholesaling instead of just staying flipping, instead of flipping houses?
Yeah. So when you're a buy and hold investor or a fix and flip investor, without the funnel of a wholesale business, you're dependent on other people to bring you deals. And ultimately, what we are trying to do at CLT Buyers, and we're in some seasons really doing really great at this and other seasons not as great, we're trying to create a place where we're creating a whole funnel of properties and we get to cherry pick the best of those to retain ourselves. And then those that don't fit our criteria, either for geographic reasons or scope of projects or our lenders don't have the capital to do a deal, that we're still monetizing those leads. And when we do that really effectively, the machine's working really great. So I guess that's a long way to get to. I think we just wanted to be a little more in the driver's seat of the deal flow. We wanted to be at the point of negotiation. It's also, now that I'm giving that answer, I'm thinking about one other part too, which is it's really important in transactions to set the expectation right with all of the parties involved, and that includes the seller. When we're buying exclusively from wholesalers, we're expecting them to have set the expectation properly. Mm-hmm. And that isn't always the case. Look, we know that you guys run like a really great business and describe the full scenario to sellers. I would say that our experience has taught us that isn't true about all of the teams that we interact with. And some don't do a great job of setting expectations with sellers, and then deals get difficult because an expectation hasn't been set. I'll give you a specific example. We had a deal one time that fell apart, all because on the day of closing, the seller had asked for like a carryover. We had an addendum drawn up for their holdover, and on the holdover, one of the line items said property to be left in broom swept condition. The team that had brought us the deal hadn't set the expectation properly with the seller. The seller lost their mind about it and refused to sign at closing over property to be left in broom swept condition.
Wow. So for lack of communication, what's the deal? Communication is important.
I mean, and even if, just an example, even if the seller said to us earlier on, hey, I don't want to leave this in broom swept condition. I want to leave all of these things. You can price it in. Mm-hmm. That's not it's the setting the expectations, having open conversations about what the seller really expects when they leave the property and what we expect when we take it on. And if we can get in the driver's seat by sourcing our own deals, we're more certain those conversations happen.
Gotcha. You hit a really good spot of setting the expectations, because we talk about this a lot, especially when we're speaking with sellers, because it's not just a transaction. Somebody lives in that house, right? So our main goal is to make sure, first of all, that they have a roof on top of their head. Because after that, and trying to resolve their issues, and the money aspect will be there if it's a deal. So having those tough conversations with the sellers, do you feel like sometimes you shoot yourself in the foot because you set so much as expectations, or I don't know, like it's just having those tough conversations up front is so much important than having the tough conversations towards the end or like a day before closing, right?
We have a rule in our business where it's like, even if a seller calls us with on paper something that's exactly a deal, that, hey, I want to sell my $1 million house for $6,000. I want to close in a week, like whatever it is, you have to push back on something because they need to understand that it's a give and take. So even if it's not like some major thing, you're like, okay, well, we can do that, but I'm going to need to close at my attorney's office. Or like, there just has to be some give and take so that they understand this is a process we're working on together. At the end of the day, when we did the postmortem on that deal that fell apart over the broom swept condition thing, the problem was the team who brought us the deal effectively had said yes to every single request the seller had. And so then if you really think about like, Freddie, you've got young kids, like if you don't help your kids understand that there's a yes and a no in a situation, then the first time they hear a no, they're going to throw just this temper tantrum because they're like, I always get my way, right? And so in a certain way, sellers have to understand there's a negotiation, there's a give and take.
Right.
I love that. I love that. Next question I have, if you have a day-to-day, what does your day-to-day kind of look like now?
Yeah. Well, I get to come and do cool things like podcasts with my buddies. So that's always fun. The day-to-day in the business for Michael and I today is he's primarily responsible for deal sourcing, so what we call acquisitions in the business, and in a less direct way, dispositions. So he's responsible for those things. In the business, I'm responsible for our transaction management, so transaction coordination, our capital management, so relationships with our investors, those who are putting private money into our deals. That's a lot of what I manage day to day. But tactically, we've really tried to. Michael's really a morning person. I'm less of a morning person. So Michael's a guy who will be up and working in the business by 7:30 in the morning. I traditionally will get to the office more like 10 a.m. And then, I have a tendency to be working on things a little later than he is generally. But I don't mind work having my attention as late as like 10 p.m., 11 p.m. That's not a problem for me. So even in that way, he and I kind of compensate for each other. So if the business needs something super early, a lot of times he'll look at it. And if not, a little later in the day, I'll look at it. Or if it's like an after hours thing or some networking, a lot of times it's kind of me who steps up and does those things. So I don't know. We're getting to a point. I wouldn't say that we're here yet, but we're getting to a point where my day looks a little bit more like a day I would design. And I'm certain a lot of folks who are listening to this or viewing this are like figuring out how to balance the W-2 and and that's tough. And it's tough to have like your day by design when you have to pay attention to, my last real job was at Wells Fargo. So when you have to pay attention to like what Wells Fargo needs, and then that changes. So I don't know, getting towards a point where it's a day by design situation.
Nice.
Perfect. What are some of the biggest misconceptions that people have about what you do, real estate in general, anything like that?
Yeah, I think, I've had the opportunity to see a good number of people come and go in this business. And I think those who don't stick around maybe make a handful of mistakes. One is we get paid with really large checks on some occurrence in this business. And I think that gives a perception that our business is like a get rich quick business. You're going to buy your meme coin at whatever, and it's going to go up to whatever, and then you're going to get to retire and never do anything again. And I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions in the business. This business is a pretty guaranteed way to create wealth, but even to get to a point where the business can offset your day-to-day needs is probably a runway of like 4 to 5 years. And I think people really don't understand that, and they don't have the grit it takes to stick at it long enough to make that happen. So that's probably the first thing. Treating it like a side hustle is a related point. I think one of the things we talked about Michael earlier, one of the things that I'm most thankful for Michael about is his insistence and continual push for us to improve systems in our business. And without systems, you really don't have a business. You just have a high-paying self-employed job. And it's got to get to a point of scale and systems if you really want this business to feed you and your family long term.
Right. Seems like wholesaling is the grind, right? It's a daily grind with wholesaling. So I understand that you're licensed as well, correct?
Yeah.
So why wholesaling? Why investment instead of just being a realtor? Just your regular realtor, showing houses. Why go to the investment side? It's a grind over here.
Yeah.
Realtor, you sign a contract.
You just sign a
Open the door.
contract. It's easy. I have to be careful because like this is being put out on the interwebs and whatever. But I am licensed. We'll broker 3 to 4 properties on average a year. I think I'm actually a listing agent on 6 or 7 of our own properties right now, which is like, this will be my peak year as an agent.
Yeah, I've seen your name when I'm running comps. I'm like,
wait a minute, I know
this
that guy.
listing agent. Hold up.
Actually, I've gotten some calls that are like, Ed, you're actually listing some things?
Yeah.
But even in our business normally, when we're listing something, we often will employ another agent to do that. So this is actually a little unusual for us. But ultimately, the answer to the question of agency or not, we have people approach us and, hey, I'm interested in getting started in real estate investing. Should I get licensed? Should I not? Our take on that is having a license allows you to help other people make decisions. You're not the principal in that transaction. And so what sets real estate investors apart is we get to be the ones whose name's actually on the contract. We get to be the one who actually signs the contract. And so when I look at opportunities, when I'm acting as an agent, I don't add quite as much value to the transaction as when I'm acting as the principal. And so because of that, when I'm acting as the agent, I'm generally not compensated as well as if I'm acting as the principal, right? So there's all this noise out there about how agents are compensated right now and percentages and all this. In any case, when you're acting as an agent, you're paid generally as a percent or as some part of the sales price. When you're acting as the principal, you get the benefit of the arbitrage between whatever you bought it for and whatever you sold it for. And just generally speaking, that number is larger. So when I act as a true investor, when I act as a principal in a transaction, I just get paid more. Yeah. So if the best value I can provide to a transaction is just helping people fill out forms and opening doors and being a more aggressive negotiator than maybe they are themselves, yes, that adds value. But when I can be the principal, when I can line up my own funding, when I can convert a property, we're going to add more value and I'm going to get paid more.
Seems like you're depending on yourself. If you want more, you got to depend on yourself.
That's
and
it.
You're your best player, so you put yourself in front of the contract. Hey, I'm going to take this deal down and let me go forward instead of, like you said, it's showing the house to a buyer, you get less pay, but at the same time, they serve a purpose, right? Realtors, investors, we all serve a purpose. Wholesalers, we all serve a purpose here in the real estate community. One thing I want to touch is so from the very first time that I started in real estate, I didn't know what wholesaling was until I went to met with Eric, and Eric introduced me to your office. Went to office hours. Can you tell us those that don't know what office hours? Just talk a little brief of what office hours is.
Yeah. So you guys have alluded to this a couple times. So to be direct, we have a lot of people in our local market who know who we are, and that's a little bit about. CLT Buyers, we consider ourselves one of the varsity teams in the space. Our ground game is stronger than almost anyone. And what I mean by that is we make sure we're present at as many places that people who are in our community are gathering. So whether it's a meetup that we run or a meetup that someone else runs, we find it important to be there. We all kind of are in the same friend group. So we have at least 5 or 6 different friends who all run meetups. Mm-hmm. And, we just try and be present there. Heck, one of them is primarily held in Spanish, and I still show up, even though I'm not very hablas and bilinguals and all that. But it's just important to be present, right? So that's one thing. But by default of that, we have a lot of people who, the advice used to be, hey, ping the biggest guy in your market and see if you can take him out for coffee and see if you can go to lunch. And unfortunately, and not to be dismissive, most of the people who we would spend time with doing that isn't going to be a relationship that is generally positive for us, meaning we're going to be giving a lot more than we're receiving. And not that in and of itself is a problem. It just becomes challenging to do that at scale. So what we decided to do back in, I think we've been doing this for close to 5 years now, is we have a specific time set aside each week, and we call it office hours. It used to be 4 hours. We curled that back to 2 hours. But every Thursday at our office from 3 to 5 p.m., we have an open Q&A session. And our team will design a specific topic we're going to talk about. And then we try and hit any questions that people have, and then we'll offset some part of that conversation with a little bit of things we've prepared. And those conversations can range from things like how to structure a creative deal to how to deal with sellers to how is marketing working, just really anything people have a question about. And what we're trying to do is first make ourselves available. So when someone hits us and is like, hey, Ed, can I meet you for coffee? No, but you're welcome to come to my office hours anytime from 3 to 5. I have a little story about that I'll get to in a second. But it allows us to do that at scale and also represent when someone's watching all of this stuff on YouTube, and like take Phoenix, Arizona as an example. There's a great community in Phoenix, Arizona that gives really, really great advice. A whole lot of people are out there. They have a great community, but there may be specifics about how they do things in Arizona that don't quite apply here in the Carolinas. And so our goal with office hours is allowing people to basically take the YouTube version of what they're hearing and come and test it locally. Hey, Ed, I heard this thing on Bigger Pockets. I heard this thing on YouTube. Does this apply in our market? And look, not that we don't know the answer to everything, and we have a certain approach. And it's okay if people disagree with our approach as well. But if you want to hear the local opinion about how I see people doing this, this is what we do. And so the whole goal of office hours is to do that. Answering the question, I guess, a little more succinctly, we do office hours for one of two reasons. First, we're the varsity team in this space, and so it's our responsibility to make sure that people are doing things the right way. Second, by virtue of being thought leaders in the space, we get presented with opportunities that we normally wouldn't, and we're able to monetize those deals in ways that are valuable for us.
Right. In the world with every guru, everybody doing real estate is a guru nowadays and charging $1,000s. Going to the office hours, just sitting there, literally just sitting there and just listening, that's gold, man. That's gold. That's a lot of money in some guru's class, right? But you offer this because you see yourself in you see yourself like there's enough for everybody.
For sure.
Right? We are competition, right? Competition, we do the same thing.
Yeah.
But here we are. We could share it, right? We could share deals. We share buyers, sellers. We can't take it down. So you have the what's the
mindset?
Yeah,
Abundance mindset.
Yeah, abundance mindset.
Yeah.
I think, to quote something my brother said a lot, we drove by more opportunity today than we could monetize in a lifetime.
Right.
So like, what do I have to be concerned about? You guys, I think, are a great example of like, in the early days, we gave a lot of coaching. You Eric, as you were transitioning like out of your day job, and Freddie for you as well. Like there was just a lot of times where like we had got to have conversations like, hey, Ed, what would you do in this situation? We would walk you through it. And now that's grown into I'm wholesaling a property across town. You guys are bringing potentially a buyer that's going to go walk it tomorrow. And hopefully we can all get paid on that. That's fantastic. So we have this view that we're going to give out a whole lot of information. 80 to 90% of the people who we give it out to aren't going to be as proactive to put it into work as probably we would like them to be. That's part of the journey. The small percentage of people who do are going to become folks like you guys and are going to grow businesses that then we get to collaborate with. So like there's really no downside for us other than, if I'm being super frank and transparent, a little bit of disappointment because there are people who I've seen along the way who could do this business but quit on themselves, and that's disappointing.
Right. I was actually going to bring this up later on, so I'm glad we brought it up now because that's one of the biggest things that I see in you, because like you are constantly promoting other people's meetups, you're collaborating with a lot of people, always promoting other people, always lifting everybody up, and that's something I think a lot of people can learn from. I know the opposite of the abundance mindset is scarcity mindset, and there's a lot of people out there that have that. For people that have that mindset, what is your advice to them or would you even give them advice from switching from that scarcity mindset to the abundance mindset?
Of course.
Yeah.
I mean, our whole thesis of how we move is based on that. I named Arizona and the Phoenix market as a market that I have a lot of respect for a lot of the players there. There's another market in the U.S. It's in Texas, but there's a lot of markets in Texas. So I probably won't get myself in too much trouble here, but there are markets where like there are these big like cliques and they're super antagonistic to each other, and like, you know, they literally are like talking trash about each other and all. I'm like, I'm just not here for all that energy.
Yeah.
And to be honest, if that's what it takes to be effective in that market, then, you know, if that's what it takes, I don't want it. So what I think is really fun for us in the Charlotte market specifically is we've been one of the leaders in a certain generation of real estate investors to say like, hey, you don't have to do it that way. And in fact, we will not just say that, we will show you how to do it. And for those who have seen it, great. Of course, I'm very, very keenly aware that I have haters. It's fine. Honestly, any hater of mine has never brought in $1 into my business, and I've probably never brought $1 into their business, so it's a little irrelevant. I'd rather just build relationships with people who I think are really freaking cool. I'm trying to avoid the cussing here.
It's a family-friendly shit.
Keep it family-friendly for you guys. Don't want that rating on YouTube to go down. But it's fun to just build businesses with people who are really cool to be around without any type of antagonism. When we see, and this happens, when we see somebody who gets a property under contract that we had been in contact with, we give them a high five and we move on to the next one because we really believe there's more opportunity that we drove by today than we could monetize in a lifetime. So I'm not going to get caught up on that one deal. I'm not going to get caught up on forcing a transaction. We're not going to create bad blood. Heck, we have, to this point, thankful to the positioning that we have in the market, we've helped save deals where two of our friends both went into a transaction, both are in contact with the seller. Unfortunately, both ended up with contracts on the property. We call them both up. We help mediate the situation. They both got paid. So if you're asking me like which approach do I prefer, I'm going to just stick with ours, and we'll see which one outlasts which. I'm pretty sure we've got some history behind which one works.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I love it. And Ed, thank you again so much for coming on the show. Again, you've been a big inspiration for us. We used to religiously go to office hours. We got so much value out of that. I highly recommend everyone to check that out. And then tell everyone else about where they can find you, kind of what you guys got going on in the community. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we've plugged office hours. So that's every Thursday from 3 to 5 at our office locally in Charlotte. Anyone who's even visiting, welcome to drop in. We have some friends who, when they fly in to go to RIA events and other things, they time it to make sure they can go to office hours. So we always love that. We host a monthly meetup. It's called the Exchange Real Estate Networking Meetup. The best place to learn about all of those things and any other opportunities that we have, houses for sale, private lending opportunities, is our Instagram. We're at CLT Buyers, all one word. And that's a great place to find us. So yeah, I'd love any feedback, any questions on the video. We'll definitely be watching that and sharing insights we have there as well.
Awesome, man. Well,
perfect. Well, again, guys, please give us a like and subscribe on YouTube. You can find us online, www.alphabravoproperties.org, on Instagram, alphabravo.nc. And I appreciate it again. Until next time, guys.
see you guys.
Let's go.
No shot, no gimmick, no gimme look. No plan, go get it, no giving up. No gas, get a mask like give it up. Gotta get it, gotta kill it like fill it up. No drop, no wait, no.